I never expected to become the center of a national news story. Standing there on the marble steps of that beachfront mansion, surrounded by police officers while my ex-boyfriend's face drained of color, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. The shocked partygoers fell silent, champagne glasses frozen midair. 6 months ago, I had been crying alone in my empty apartment, watching my inheritance and dreams vanish. Now, as the financial crimes investigators pushed past the confused caterers, I caught a glimpse of his new girlfriend, his supposed ex, her mouth hanging open in disbelief. Sometimes justice arrives in the most unexpected ways, and sometimes it brings the news cameras with it. The inheritance came 3 months after my father's funeral, $120,000, the sum total of my dad's life insurance policy, modest savings, and the sale of his small home in Arizona. Dad had worked 60-hour weeks at his construction company for 30 years, saving diligently despite raising me alone after Mom died. Every dollar represented his sacrifice and love. He wanted you to have a foundation for your future, the lawyer had explained, sliding the paperwork across his desk. At 28, working as an elementary school art teacher in Philadelphia, I had been living paycheck to paycheck. The inheritance wasn't life-changing wealth, but it represented opportunity, perhaps a down payment on a small house or funding to start the children's art therapy center I had dreamed about since college. That was before I met Ryan. We connected on a dating app, his profile showing a smiling man with kind eyes holding a rescue dog. Our first date lasted 5 hours, conversation flowing effortlessly. By our third date, I was already falling hard. "I've never met anyone who gets me like you do, Emma," he told me, his fingers intertwined with mine across the restaurant table. Ryan was 34, charming and passionate about his work in sustainable business development. He drove a modest car, lived in a comfortable but unpretentious apartment, and spoke thoughtfully about wanting to make a difference in the world. When he mentioned his business experience, it was always with humility. "I've had successes and failures," he admitted one night as we walked along the river. "But I've learned that authentic businesses built on real value always succeed in the end." 2 months into our relationship, as we were cooking dinner at my apartment, Ryan first mentioned the opportunity. "I've been working on something big," he said, chopping vegetables with precise, confident movements. "A sustainable housing development project outside the city. Prefabricated, eco-friendly homes at accessible price points." I nodded, only half listening as I stirred the pasta sauce. "The projections are incredible," he continued, his voice growing animated. "We've got interest from 3 major investors already, but we need to secure the land before property values increase next quarter." Over the following weeks, Ryan's project became a frequent topic. He would show me sketches of modern, efficient homes arranged in community-focused neighborhoods. He introduced me to complex spreadsheets projecting impressive returns. "The beauty is the social impact," he would explain, eyes bright with conviction. "Affordable housing that's actually beautiful and sustainable, or solving 3 problems at once." I was impressed by his passion and knowledge. When he mentioned needing additional investment to secure the land parcel, I didn't immediately think of my inheritance, but Ryan had subtly been laying groundwork. "The minimum buy-in for investors is $200,000, he mentioned casually one evening. "We're giving priority to friends and family before opening to outside investors. The projected return is 40% in the first 18 months. I remember feeling a twinge of regret that I couldn't participate. That night, lying in bed, I mentioned my inheritance for the first time. "Dad left me some money," I said quietly. "Not enough to invest in your project, though." Ryan was silent for a moment. "How much?" "If you don't mind me asking." "$120,000. He propped himself up on one elbow, looking at me with sudden intensity. "That's actually perfect timing, Emma." "What do you mean?" "I wasn't going to mention this, but we've created a special friends and family tier for smaller investors, starting at exactly $100,000. I felt a flutter of anxiety. I was planning to use that money for a down payment, or maybe to start my art therapy center. Ryan nodded thoughtfully. "That makes sense, but what if you could do both? With the returns from this investment, you could have your down payment and fund your center within 2 years." The next few weeks became a soft pressure campaign. Ryan never explicitly asked me to invest, but he constantly shared updates about the project, permits secured, design plans finalized, other investors coming on board. He introduced me to his business partner, James, a polished man in his 40s who exuded confidence and spoke about the project with authoritative certainty. Ryan's being modest about the potential here, James told me over dinner at an expensive restaurant. "We're not just looking at 40% returns. For early investors like our friends and family, we were expecting closer to 60%. When I expressed concerns about risk, Both men assured me they had guaranteed buyers already lined up. The risk has been engineered out of the equation, Ryan explained. That's why we're keeping this round close-knit. Once word gets out, we'll be turning people away. Looking back, I see all the red flags, but at the time, blinded by love and the dream of multiplying my father's legacy, I began to convince myself it made sense. The night I decided to invest, Ryan took me to celebrate at the nicest restaurant in the city. He ordered champagne and looked into my eyes with what I thought was genuine emotion. "I'm so proud of you for investing in our future," he said, raising his glass. "Your dad would be proud too." 2 days later, I transferred $120,000 to the business account Ryan had provided. He gave me a folder of official-looking documents, an operating agreement, investment contract, and colorful brochures showing renderings of the development. "Welcome to the family, partner," he said, kissing me on the forehead. For the first 2 months, everything seemed perfect. Ryan sent weekly mail updates about progress on acquisition completed, permits advancing, preliminary construction scheduled. He began traveling more frequently for investor meetings and site visits. Then the updates grew less frequent. Ryan became harder to reach, often taking hours to respond to my texts. When we did see each other, he seemed distracted, checking his phone constantly. "Is everything okay with the project?" I asked one night after he canceled our dinner plans for the 3rd time that month. "Better than okay," he assured me, though his smile didn't reach his eyes. "Just extremely busy. This is the critical phase." By the 4th month, my anxiety was growing. Ryan had stopped sending formal updates, brushing off my questions with vague assurances. When I asked to visit the construction site, he explained it wasn't safe yet for non-personnel. "Insurance regulations," he said with a shrug. "But I'll take you soon, I promise." I tried calling James, the business partner, but discovered his number had been disconnected. When I mentioned this to Ryan, his expression darkened. "James and I had a falling out," he said tersely. "Creative differences. I'm handling everything now." The first time I suggested visiting Ryan's office, he laughed it off. "It's just a boring co-working space," he said. "Nothing to see." But when I surprised him there one afternoon, bringing lunch as a gesture of support, the receptionist looked confused. "Ryan Miller? We don't have anyone by that name working here." My heart began to pound. "He's with the Sustainable Housing Development Project. Green Future Homes?" She checked her computer again and shook her head. "No businesses by that name registered here. Are you sure you have the right address?" That evening, Ryan called with an explanation ready. "We moved offices last month," he said smoothly. "I forgot to tell you, with everything going on. We're over on Market Street now." I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. But the knot in my stomach was growing tighter. 5 months after my investment, Ryan became increasingly unavailable. Our relationship, once so vibrant, had withered to occasional texts and brief, distracted encounters. When we did meet, he would deflect my questions about the business with practiced tease. "These things take time, Emma. Development is all about patience." Then came the call that shattered everything. "Emma, we need to talk," Ryan said, his voice unusually solemn. "Can I come over tonight?" He arrived at my apartment looking appropriately grave. Sitting at my kitchen table, the same table where we'd shared so many meals and dreams, he delivered the news. "The project has failed. The land parcel had unexpected environmental issues that weren't disclosed to us. The remediation costs would be prohibitive." I felt like I couldn't breathe. "What does that mean for the investment, for my money?" Ryan looked down at his hands. "It's gone, Emma, all of it. The business is bankrupt." "But you said it was guaranteed," I whispered, my father's face flashing in my mind. "You promised me it was safe." "Business always has risks," he replied, his tone suddenly clinical. "The contracts you signed acknowledge that. I've lost everything too." I began to cry, the full weight of what had happened crashing down on me. My father's legacy gone, my dreams shattered. Through my tears I noticed something strange. Ryan wasn't comforting me. He was checking the time on his expensive watch, a watch I'd never seen before. "I have to go," he said, standing abruptly. "I know this is a shock. Take some time to process it. We'll talk more later." As he headed for the door, I managed to ask through my tears, "What happens to us, to our relationship?" He paused, not quite meeting my eyes. "Maybe we should take a break. Give each other some space to heal from this setback." And just like that, he was gone, taking my heart, my trust in my father's money with him. The weeks following Ryan's revelation were the darkest of my life. I cycled through grief, rage, shame, and crushing self-doubt. How could I have been so naive, so trusting? I had handed over everything my father had worked his entire life for to a man I'd known for mere months. I stopped eating regularly, stopped calling friends back, drag myself to my teaching job only because my students depended on me. My apartment became a reflection of my mental state and wash dishes piling up, laundry unfolded, blinds perpetually closed. One particularly low evening, sitting on my kitchen floor with a pint of ice cream and swollen eyes, I finally admitted to myself that something didn't add up. If the business had truly failed catastrophically, why had Ryan seemed so unbothered? Where was his grief, his desperation? That night, I created a new email address and wrote to James, the business partner Ryan had supposedly fallen out with. I found his contact information on an old business card tucked in the investment folder. James, I invested in Green Future Homes and was told the project failed due to environmental issues. I'd appreciate any information you can provide about what happened. To my surprise, James responded the next morning. Emma, I don't know what you're talking about. I've never been involved in any business called Green Future Homes, and I haven't seen Ryan Miller in over 3 years since we briefly worked at the same consulting firm. I'm concerned my name is being used fraudulently. My hands shook as I read his words. It had all been a lie. Every presentation, every promise, every passionate declaration about sustainable housing and community impact. That afternoon, I took a sick day from school and began investigating in earnest. I searched for any registration of Green Future Homes as a business entity, nothing. I checked county records for the supposed land purchase, nothing. I even drove to the location where the development was supposedly being built. It was an untouched parcel of land with a for sale sign still prominently displayed. I called the real estate company on the sign, posing as an interested developer. Has this property had any environmental assessments done recently? I asked. No, ma'am, the agent replied cheerfully. It's been on the market for 2 years. Clean title, no known issues. The lies were unraveling faster than I could process them. I spent that night combing through every document Ryan had given me. Most were elaborate fakes, designed to look official but lacking crucial details that a legitimate business document would contain. The investment contract I'd signed wasn't even legally binding, just an impressive-looking piece of paper. I began searching for Ryan online, digging deeper than the cursory search I'd done when we first met. His digital footprint was surprisingly thin for a supposed business developer. His LinkedIn profile listed vague consulting roles and an MBA from Princeton, a detail he'd mentioned often. On a hunch, I called Princeton's registrar. We have no record of a Ryan Miller graduating with an MBA in the last 15 years. The administrator informed me after checking their records. The man I had loved, the man I had trusted with my future, was a complete fabrication. I considered going to the police. But what would I tell them? That I had willingly given my money to my boyfriend for a business investment? That I had signed papers without proper legal review? I imagined the pitying looks, the unspoken judgment, another naive woman scammed by a charming man. The shame kept me silent. Instead, I fell into a routine of online stalking, searching for any trace of Ryan or what he might be doing with my money, with my father's money. Weeks passed with no success. Then, purely by chance, I found something. While scrolling mindlessly through Instagram one night, a suggested account appeared, someone I didn't follow but who had several mutual connections with Ryan. Her name was Alyssa, and her profile showed a stunning blonde woman with a dazzling smile. Curious, I clicked on her profile. The most recent photo showed her standing on a magnificent deck overlooking the ocean, champagne glass raised in celebration. The caption read, "New beginnings in our dream home. Blessed beach life." I might have scrolled past it without a second thought, except for one detail in the background, a familiar watch on the wrist of the man standing beside her, his face just out of frame. My heart pounding, I scrolled through more of her photos, and there he was, Ryan, his arm around her waist, kissing her cheek, building a bonfire on the beach. The timestamp showed posts going back over a year, including during the period when he and I were supposedly in an exclusive relationship. One photo in particular stopped me cold. Posted just 3 weeks earlier, it showed Ryan and Alyssa standing in front of a stunning modern beach house. The caption read, "Still pinching myself. Thanks for making my dream home a reality, babe. Blessed dream home." The rage that flooded through me was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. This wasn't just about the money anymore. This was about justice. About not letting him get away with destroying my life while he built a perfect one with someone else, possibly using my father's money to do it. With shaking hands, I sent Alyssa a direct message. "Hi Alyssa, you don't know me, but I think we need to talk about Ryan Miller." Alyssa didn't respond to my message right away. I spent the next 24 hours in a state of anxious anticipation, checking my phone obsessively. When her reply finally came, it was brief and defensive. "I don't know who you are or what you want, But Ryan warned me about his crazy ex trying to cause problems. Please don't contact me again. Her dismissive tone ignited something in me. Crazy ex. Is that how he had described me? The woman he had systematically defrauded and abandoned? I typed a response. I'm not crazy. I invested $120,000 in Ryan's supposed business venture. Money I inherited from my father. Ryan told me the business failed, then disappeared with the money. Now I see him buying you a beach house. Please, just talk to me. Hours passed with no response. I was beginning to think she had blocked me when my phone pinged with a new message. What business venture? What are you talking about? That message opened the floodgates. Over the next several hours, Alyssa and I exchanged dozens of messages, piecing together Ryan's elaborate web of lies. According to Alyssa, she and Ryan had been together for nearly 2 years. She knew nothing about any sustainable housing project. Ryan had told her he was a successful investment consultant with private clients. He told me the beach house was purchased with his year-end bonus, she wrote. We closed on it last month. My hands trembled as I asked, how much was the house? 1.2 million. He put down 300,000. My inheritance money plus likely funds from other victims had financed their dream home. I felt physically ill. Has he asked you to invest in anything? I questioned. Her response sent chills down my spine. He's been talking about a new opportunity. Something about sustainable agriculture. He suggested I use my trust fund to get in early. Ryan hadn't just scammed me. He had found a new target and was preparing to do it again. Alyssa's initial skepticism quickly transformed into horror as I shared documentation. What little I had, and we discovered more inconsistencies in the stories Ryan had told each of us, where he had been on certain dates, his family background, even his favorite foods and allergies were different in the versions of himself he had presented to us. I need to see you in person. Alyssa finally wrote. I need to look you in the eye and hear your story. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop halfway between Philadelphia and the coastal town where her new beach house was located. When I arrived, I spotted her immediately, even more beautiful in person, her expression a mixture of wariness and concern. For 2 hours we talked, compared notes, and gradually accepted the devastating truth. We had both been manipulated by a skilled con artist. But while I had lost everything, Alyssa still had a chance to protect herself. He's planning a housewarming party this weekend, she said, stirring her untouched coffee. He's invited all his friends and business associates. People I've never met before. Probably more potential victims, I suggested. People he's grooming for his next scam. Alyssa nodded, her jaw set with growing determination. What are we going to do about it? The question hung between us. What could we do? Go to the police. They might dismiss it as a relationship gone bad, a civil matter rather than criminal fraud. Confront Ryan? He would simply deny everything, maybe even charm his way out of it. I have an idea, Alyssa said finally, leaning forward. But it's a bit extreme. Her plan was simple but audacious. I would attend the housewarming party as her surprise guest. We would confront Ryan together, in front of all his contacts and potential victims. The public embarrassment might not get my money back, but it would disrupt his operation and possibly prevent others from being scammed. It wasn't enough, I thought. Not nearly enough. We need to do more than embarrass him, I said quietly. We need to build a case. Over the next few days, Alyssa and I became unlikely allies in an investigation of our own. She gave me access to financial documents she had seen in the beach house. I compiled all my fraudulent investment paperwork. Together we created a timeline of Ryan's activities and identified patterns in his methods. Most crucially, through social media connections and careful outreach, we identified 3 other women who had invested in Ryan's various fictional businesses over the past 5 years. Each had lost between $50,000 and $200,000. Each had been romantically involved with him, and none had gone to the authorities out of shame or the belief that they wouldn't be taken seriously. For days before the housewarming party, armed with our dossier of evidence, I finally walked into the Philadelphia Police Station's Financial Crimes Unit. The detective who took my statement, a no-nonsense woman named Detective Mercer, listened carefully as I laid out the case. This isn't just a bad investment or boyfriend who lied to me, I explained, sliding the folder across her desk. This is a pattern of systematic fraud targeting multiple victims across several states. Detective Mercer reviewed the documents, her expression revealing nothing. When she finally looked up, her eyes were sharp with interest. You've done some impressive investigative work here, she said. But confronting him at this party isn't a good idea. It could tip him off, give him time to disappear. My heart sank. After coming this far, I couldn't bear the thought of Ryan escaping consequences once again. What if, Detective Mercer continued thoughtfully, Instead of you confronting him, we did. The plan came together quickly after that. The Financial Crimes Unit would coordinate with police in the coastal jurisdiction. They would allow the party to begin, giving Ryan false confidence and time to potentially incriminate himself further with guests. Then, officers would arrive with a search warrant for financial records, electronic devices, and any evidence related to the fraud allegations. We'll need statements from all the victims, Detective Mercer explained, and you'll need to stay away until we give the signal. I agreed, though the thought of not witnessing Ryan's downfall firsthand was disappointing. Over the next few days, I helped coordinate statements from the other victims, building a case too substantial for any prosecutor to ignore. The night of the party arrived. According to our plan, I was supposed to wait at a hotel 10 miles from the beach house, ready to come identify Ryan once the police had secured the scene. But as I sat in my hotel room watching the minutes tick by, something shifted inside me. My father had taught me to stand up for myself, to face difficult moments with courage, to look people in the eye when they had wronged me. Waiting in a hotel room while others delivered justice felt wrong. I called an Uber and gave the driver the address of the beach house. Change of plans, I texted Detective Mercer. I'm coming to the house now. Her response was immediate: do not interfere. We are 30 minutes out. Wait for our signal. But I was already en route, determination hardening inside me. I wasn't going to confront Ryan or disrupt the police operation. I just needed to see his face when justice finally caught up with him. The beach house was even more spectacular in person, a modern glass and cedar structure perched on a bluff overlooking the Atlantic. Cars lined the long driveway, and the sound of laughter and music drifted through the open windows. Through the massive glass walls, I could see people in cocktail attire mingling in the expansive living room. I instructed my driver to park a short distance away and wait. Then, heart pounding, I walked up the curved driveway to the front entrance. Through the glass door, I could see Ryan holding court in the center of the room, champagne in hand, laughing with a group of well-dressed men and women. Potential victims, I thought grimly. Alyssa spotted me first. Her eyes widened in alarm. This wasn't the plan, but she quickly composed herself and made her way to the door. What are you doing here? She whispered as she slipped outside. The police aren't here yet. I know. I needed to see it happen. My voice caught. He took everything from me, Alyssa. Everything my father worked for. She glanced back at the party, conflict evident on her face. 20 more minutes, she said finally. Stay out of sight until then. I nodded and retreated to a landscaped area beside the house, where I could observe through the windows without being seen. The minutes crawled by as I watched Trey unmove confidently through the crowd, stopping to chat with different groups, presumably laying groundwork for his next schemes. Finally, I saw them, 3 police cruisers turning into the driveway, lights off, moving deliberately. Behind them, 2 unmarked vehicles that I guessed contained Detective Mercer and her team. My phone buzzed with a text from Detective Mercer. Stay where you are. Do not approach until we secure the scene. I watched as 6 officers approached the front door, followed by Detective Mercer and another plainclothes investigator. Alyssa, playing her part perfectly, answered the door with convincing surprise. From my vantage point, I could see the exact moment Ryan noticed the police. His champagne glass froze halfway to his lips, his practiced smile faltering, as Detective Mercer showed him the search warrant. His eyes darted around the room, perhaps looking for an escape route, finding none. The party guests fell silent, watching in confusion as officers began moving through the house. I heard Detective Mercer's voice carry through the open windows. Ryan Miller, we're investigating allegations of wire fraud, investment fraud, and theft by deception. We have a warrant to search these premises and seize evidence related to these crimes. Ryan's response was too quiet for me to hear, but his body language shifted to a posture I recognized, the wounded innocence, the disarming smile that had fooled so many. He was trying to charm his way out of this too. My phone buzzed again. Scene secure. You can approach now. With legs that felt simultaneously leaden and weightless, I walked around to the front entrance. An officer nodded and allowed me to enter. The spacious living room had transformed from a celebratory space to a crime scene, with guests pressed against the walls, watching wide-eyed as officers methodically moved through the house. Ryan's back was to me as I entered. He was still talking to Detective Mercer, his voice taking on the reasonable, slightly wounded tone I knew so well. This is clearly a misunderstanding, he was saying. I run legitimate businesses. I have documentation for everything. Is that the same documentation you showed Emma Thompson? Detective Mercer asked coolly. The fake business plans? The fraudulent investment agreements? At the mention of my name, Ryan stiffened. Slowly he turned around. Our eyes met across the room. For a moment, just a moment, his mask slipped completely, revealing the calculating stranger beneath. Then, quickly, he reassembled his features into an expression of confused heart. "Emma, what is this about?" he asked, taking a step toward me. "Why are you doing this?" An officer moved slightly, blocking his approach. I stood my ground, feeling strangely calm in the eye of the storm I had helped create. "You know exactly what this is about," I said, my voice steady. $120,000, my father's life insurance. The money you stole with your fake sustainable housing project." Ryan's face hardened. "You invested in a business that failed. That's not a crime." "There was no business," I replied. "There was never any land, any permits, any investors. It was all a lie." "You can't prove that," he said, but uncertainty had crept into his voice. Detective Mercer stepped forward. "Actually, Mr. Miller, we believe we can. We've identified multiple victims with nearly identical stories across 3 states. We have the fraudulent documents you created. And now we have access to your financial records, which I suspect will show the money trail quite clearly." As she spoke, another officer emerged from what appeared to be a home office, carrying a laptop and several external hard drives. "Found a safe in the closet, detective. Lots of interesting paperwork inside." The color drained from Ryan's face. For the first time, he seemed to realize that his carefully constructed world was truly collapsing. One of the party guests, a distinguished-looking older man, stepped forward. "What's going on, Ryan? What is she talking about?" Before Ryan could answer, I turned to the man. "Are you considering investing in his new sustainable agriculture venture?" The man's startled expression told me everything. "How did you know that?" "Because that's what he does," I said, addressing the room at large. "He finds people with money. He creates elaborate fake business plans. He guarantees returns. And then he disappears with your investment." Murmurs spread through the crowd. I saw several guests exchange alarmed glances. "That's enough, Miss Thompson," Detective Mercer said quietly. "We'll take it from here." As if on cue, the second plainclothes investigator approached Ryan with handcuffs. "Ryan Miller, you're under arrest for wire fraud, investment fraud, and theft by deception. You have the right to remain silent." The familiar words of the Miranda warning echoed in the suddenly silent room as the handcuffs clicked around Ryan's wrist. His eyes, now blazing with undisguised hatred, locked onto mine. In that moment, I saw the real Ryan Miller, not the charming, passionate man I thought I had loved, but the predator who had been hiding in plain sight all along. As the officers led him out, Alyssa came to stand beside me. Together, we watched through the massive windows as Ryan was placed in the back of a police cruiser. Neither of us spoke. There was nothing left to say. One of the investigators approached us. "We'll need formal statements from both of you tomorrow. For now, we're securing the property as a crime scene." Alyssa nodded numbly. "Where am I supposed to go?" "You might want to contact family or friends," the investigator suggested gently. "This house was purchased with fraudulently obtained funds. It will likely be seized as evidence." Another loss for Alyssa, though not as complete as mine. As we walked out together, leaving behind the dream house that had been built on lies, she turned to me. "I'm sorry," she said simply, "for what he did to you, for not seeing through him sooner." "It's not your fault," I replied. "He was very good at what he did." We parted with a promise to meet the next day at the police station. As my Uber drove me back to the hotel, I felt something unexpected, not the triumph or satisfaction I had imagined, but a quiet sense of closure. My father's money was still gone, but Ryan would face consequences for what he had done. More importantly, he wouldn't be able to victimize anyone else. That night, for the first time in months, I slept without nightmares. The morning after Ryan's arrest, I awoke to my phone buzzing incessantly. Missed calls, text messages, and news alerts filled my screen. Confused, I opened the first news notification. Investments scammer arrested at luxury beach house party. Multiple victims come forward. Somehow, the story had leaked to the press. As I scrolled through more alerts, I realized that our confrontation had become much bigger than I had anticipated. A party guest had recorded Ryan's arrest on their phone, and the video had gone viral overnight. The dramatic scene: police officers entering a lavish housewarming party, a con man in handcuffs, emotional victims confronting their abuser, had captured public attention. By the time I arrived at the police station to give my formal statement, reporters were already gathered outside. Detective Mercer hurried me through a side entrance. "Sorry about this circus," she said, guiding me to an interview room. "Someone at the party talked to the press. The story's everywhere. Is that a problem for the case?" I asked, suddenly worried. "Actually, it might help," she replied. "We've already received calls from 3 more potential victims who recognized Miller from the news. The prosecutor is building a stronger case by the hour." My statement took over 2 hours to complete. I provided every detail I could remember about Ryan's scheme, the fake business documents, the manipulative tactics, the precise timing of the investment and his disappearance. Detective Mercer recorded everything meticulously. What happens next? I asked when we had finished. Miller will be arraigned today. Given the amount of money involved in the interstate nature of the crimes, he's looking at federal charges. The FBI is already involved. Will I get my money back? Detective Mercer's expressions softened slightly. We'll try. We've frozen his accounts and will trace the money as best we can. But financial fraudsters are usually good at hiding assets. As I left the interview room, I spotted Alyssa waiting in the hallway. She looked exhausted but managed a small smile when she saw me. How are you holding up? I asked. Been better, she admitted. I'm staying with a friend. The police sealed the beach house. We were about to say more when a commotion erupted at the front of the station. Through the glass doors, I could see camera flashes and a crowd of reporters surrounding someone. As the doors opened, a well-dressed man in his 50s entered, flanked by what appeared to be legal assistants carrying briefcases. That's Stanley Porter, Alyssa whispered, one of the best defense attorneys in the state. My heart sank. Ryan had managed to secure top-tier legal representation. The case might not be as straightforward as I had hoped. Porter spotted us and paused, his sharp eyes taking in our worn appearances. For a moment, I thought he might approach us, but instead, he nodded curtly and continued down the hallway toward the holding cells. He's representing Ryan, I said numbly. This just got more complicated. Alyssa squeezed my arm. Stay strong. The evidence is solid. We parted ways again, promising to keep each other updated. As I pushed through the crowd of reporters outside, someone thrust a microphone toward me. Miss Thompson, how does it feel to take down your ex-boyfriend's fraud operation? I ducked my head and kept walking, ignoring the barrage of questions that followed. This wasn't about fame or revenge. It was about justice and preventing others from experiencing what I had endured. The next few days passed in a blur of legal proceedings and media frenzy. Ryan's arraignment made national headlines. He pleaded not guilty to all charges, his attorney arguing that the business ventures were legitimate but unsuccessful. The judge, unconvinced by these claims given the preliminary evidence, set bail at $2 million. To my shock, someone posted bail the very same day. Who would pay that much to get him out? I asked Detective Mercer over the phone, panic rising in my voice. We're looking into it, she replied, sounding equally concerned. But don't worry. He's wearing an ankle monitor and had to surrender his passport. He's not going anywhere. Despite these assurances, I installed new locks on my apartment door and a security system. The thought of Ryan free on the streets, potentially seeking revenge, terrified me. 3 days after Ryan's release on bail, I received an unexpected visitor at school. I was cleaning up after my last art class when the school secretary appeared at my classroom door. Emma, there's someone here to see you. Says she's Ryan Miller's mother. My hands froze in the act of washing paintbrushes. Did she give a name? Patricia Miller. Should I tell her you're not available? Curiosity overrode my caution. No, it's fine. Send her in. A few moments later, a petite woman in her early 60s entered my classroom. She had Ryan's eyes in the same confident posture, but her expression held something Ryan's never had: genuine remorse. Miss Thompson, she said softly, thank you for seeing me. I know this must be uncomfortable. What can I do for you? Mrs. Miller? I asked, maintaining my distance. She sighed heavily. First, I want to apologize for what my son did to you, to all of you. There's no excuse for his behavior. I nodded, unsure how to respond. Second, she continued, I want you to know that I was the one who posted his bail. You? I couldn't hide my surprise. Why would you do that after what he did? Patricia Miller's eyes welled with tears. Because I'm partly responsible for what he's become. I enabled his behavior for years, made excuses, covered for him. This time I bailed him out on one condition: that he face the consequences of his actions. She reached into her purse and withdrew an envelope. This is for you. It's not everything he took, but it's a start. With shaking hands, I opened the envelope and found a cashier's check for $50,000. I don't understand, I whispered. Ryan has hidden money in various accounts, she explained. I've known about some of them for years but looked the other way. No more. I've convinced him to begin making restitution to his victims, starting with you. I stared at the check, emotions warring inside me. Relief at recovering some of my father's money. Suspicion about Ryan's true motives. Confusion about Patricia's role in all this. Why now? I finally asked. Why come forward after all this time? Patricia's composure faltered. Because I'm dying. Miss Thompson, Cancer. 6 months. Maybe less. I want to set things right before I go. The raw pain in her voice seemed genuine. Still, after being deceived so thoroughly by Ryan, I had developed a healthy skepticism. I appreciate the gesture, I said carefully, but I need to discuss this with the detectives handling the case. This could affect the legal proceedings. She nodded in understanding. Of course, I've already spoken with Detective Mercer. She knows I'm here. Patricia rose to leave, then hesitated. There's one more thing you should know. Ryan is considering a plea deal. My breath caught. What kind of deal? Full restitution to all identified victims in exchange for reduced charges. No prison time, but 5 years probation and community service. I felt a surge of anger. That's it? After everything he did? He just writes some checks and walks free? Patricia's eyes met mine steadily. The alternative is a lengthy trial where he'll use every legal maneuver to avoid conviction. His attorney believes he has a fighting chance, especially if certain evidence is ruled inadmissible. This way, at least everyone gets their money back. After Patricia left, I called Detective Mercer immediately. She confirmed everything: the restitution offer, the potential plea deal, Patricia's terminal diagnosis. It's not ideal, Detective Mercer admitted, but financial fraud cases are notoriously difficult to prosecute successfully. Without a plea, this could drag on for years. I spent that night pacing my apartment, torn between wanting my money back and needing to see Riot really punished. By morning, I had made my decision. I called Detective Mercer. I want to meet with Ryan and his attorney, I said, face to face. Before I agreed to anything, the meeting was arranged for the following afternoon at the district attorney's office. I arrived early, rehearsing what I would say. Alyssa joined me, along with 2 other victims who had come forward. We sat together on one side of a conference table, a united front. When Ryan entered with his attorney, he looked different than I remembered, subdued, his usually perfect appearance slightly disheveled. He avoided direct eye contact as he took his seat across from us. The district attorney, a stern woman in her 40s, opened the meeting. Mr. Miller has proposed full financial restitution to all victims in exchange for a plea to reduce charges. Before we proceed, the victims have requested this meeting. Ryan's attorney, Stanley Porter, nodded. My client is prepared to answer questions within reason, though I advise against discussing specific details of the alleged offenses. Alleged? One of the other victims, a woman named Jennifer, snapped. He took $200,000 of my retirement savings for a fake medical technology company. Porter remained impassive. We are here in good faith to discuss resolution, not to debate allegations. I leaned forward, finally catching Ryan's eye. I have one question. Why? Why target people who trusted you, who loved you? For a moment, something like shame flickered across Ryan's face. Then his familiar mask slipped back into place. It wasn't personal, he said quietly. It was just business. His callous response ignited my anger. Business? You called it love. You met my friends, my colleagues. You visited my father's grave with me. Was that just business too? Ryan remained silent, his attorney placing a warning hand on his arm. Alyssa spoke next, her voice trembling slightly. Did you ever care about any of us? Even a little? Before Ryan could answer, Porter intervened. This line of questioning isn't productive. We're here to discuss the restitution agreement. No, I said firmly. We're here because your client wants something from us, our blessing on a plea deal that lets him walk free. He owes us answers first. The district attorney nodded. I'll allow it. Mr. Miller, you're not required to respond, but I encourage you to consider doing so. Ryan shifted uncomfortably, then sighed. In the beginning with each of you it wasn't entirely an act. The connection was real, at least somewhat. But then opportunity presented itself. Opportunity? Jennifer echoed incredulously. We were people who trusted you, not opportunities. You don't understand, Ryan continued, a hint of his old charm creeping into his voice. I saw potential to create something bigger than conventional relationships. Financial partnerships with people I genuinely liked. Save the spin, I interrupted. You're still trying to con us even now. Ryan's facade finally cracked. What do you want me to say? That I'm a monster? That I enjoyed hurting you? It wasn't like that. I compartmentalized. The businesses may not have been real, but they could have been. In my mind, I was always going to pay everyone back eventually. With interest. With what money? Alyssa demanded. The money from your next victims. Ryan had no answer for that. The meeting continued for another hour, with each victim confronting Ryan in turn. He alternated between defensive justifications and hollow apologies. By the end, it was clear to everyone in the room that Ryan felt true remorse only for being caught, not for his actions. As we prepared to leave, the district attorney pulled me aside. Based on what I've seen today, I'm reconsidering the plea offer. His lack of genuine remorse concerns me. Hope flared within me. What does that mean? It means I'm going to push for stricter terms, supervised probation, significant community service, and most importantly, a permanent ban from any financial or investment activities. It wasn't prison time, but it was something, a real consequence that would prevent Ryan from harming others in the future. As I left the district attorney's office, I felt a strange mixture of emotions: relief that the ordeal might soon be over, satisfaction that Ryan would face meaningful restrictions, but also lingering anger that he wouldn't serve time behind bars. Outside, Ryan's mother was waiting. She approached hesitantly. "How did it go?" "About as well as could be expected," I replied. "Your son is still more sorry he got caught than sorry for what he did." Patricia nodded sadly. "I know. That's why I insisted on the restitution. Words mean nothing to Ryan. Actions are the only measure." "Why did he turn out this way?" I couldn't help asking. "Was he always like this?" She was quiet for a long moment. "Ryan was always charming, always able to talk his way out of trouble. His father and I thought it was cute when he was little. By the time we realized it had become something darker, it was too late. We'd created a person who believed rules didn't apply to him." As Patricia turned to leave, she handed me another envelope. "One more thing. Information about offshore accounts Ryan didn't disclose to his attorney. Accounts the investigators haven't found yet. Do with it what you will." I stared at the envelope in shock. "Why are you giving me this?" "Because true accountability requires full disclosure," she said simply. "And because my son needs to learn that actions have consequences, even when those consequences are uncomfortable." That envelope would change everything. The next morning, I delivered it directly to Detective Mercer. Within hours, the FBI had frozen 3 additional accounts containing nearly $2 million money that could be used for restitution to victims who hadn't yet come forward. When Ryan discovered what his mother had done, he exploded. His attorney withdrew from the case after Ryan refused to follow legal advice. The plea deal collapsed, and Ryan, in a desperate attempt to flee before additional charges could be filed, violated the terms of his bail by attempting to remove his ankle monitor. He was arrested again, this time with no possibility of bail. The courtroom was packed on the day of Ryan's sentencing. What had begun as a local fraud case had transformed into a nationally followed story about romance scams and financial predators. News cameras lined the hallway outside, and reporters filled the back rows. I sat in the front row beside Alyssa and the other victims who had come forward, 7 women in total, representing losses of over $1 million. Behind us sat dozens of other fraud victims who had traveled from across the country to witness justice being served, even if their own cases were different. Ryan L., representing himself after firing his second attorney, looked nothing like the confident, charming man I had fallen in love with, dressed in an ill-fitting suit, hair unkempt. He sat alone at the defense table, occasionally glancing back at his mother, who watched from the spectator section with tears in her eyes. The judge, an older woman with steel gray hair and piercing eyes, reviewed the case documents carefully before addressing the court. "Mr. Miller, you stand before this court having pleaded guilty to multiple counts of wire fraud, investment fraud, and theft by deception. Before I pronounce sentence, do you wish to make a statement?" Ryan rose, smoothing his jacket in a gesture that reminded me painfully of the man I thought I had known. For a moment, I feared he would attempt to charm the judge as he had charmed so many others. Instead, he surprised me. "Your Honor, I've prepared a statement," he began, his voice lacking its usual confidence. But standing here now, seeing the faces of the people I've hurt, I realized no prepared words could possibly be adequate. He turned slightly, addressing us directly rather than the judge. "I betrayed your trust. I exploited your feelings. I told myself elaborate lies to justify taking what wasn't mine. There's no excuse for what I did." I felt Alyssa stiffen beside me. Like me, she was likely wondering if this was yet another performance, his final con. "I don't expect forgiveness," Ryan continued. "I don't deserve it. All I can say is that I will spend every day of whatever sentence you impose reflecting on the harm I've caused and working to make amends. Not with words, but with actions." He sat down abruptly, eyes downcast. The courtroom remained silent, the judge studying him thoughtfully. "Mr. Miller," she finally said, "this court has seen many financial fraudsters over the years. Most claim they intended no harm. Most promise rehabilitation. Most express remorse that this court finds questionable at best. Ryan nodded slightly, accepting the rebuke. What sets your case apart, the judge continued, is not just the financial harm you caused, which was substantial, but the emotional devastation you deliberately inflicted. You didn't simply steal money, you manufactured relationships specifically to gain access to that money. You exploited trust and affection in the most calculating manner possible. The judge shuffled papers before her, then looked directly at Ryan. The prosecution has recommended a sentence of 5 years. Given the nature of your crimes and your apparent lack of genuine remorse until very recently, I find that recommendation insufficient. My breath caught. The judge was going beyond the prosecutor's recommendation. Ryan Miller, I hereby sentence you to 8 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised release. During that supervised release, you will be prohibited from any employment involving financial management or investment activities. You will make full restitution to all identified victims plus interest. You will perform 1,000 hours of community service educating others about financial fraud. The gavel came down with finality. Ryan, visibly shaken by the severity of the sentence, was immediately taken into custody by court officers. As they led him away, he looked back once not at his mother, but at me. In that brief glance, I saw something I had never seen from him before: genuine regret. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us, shouting questions about our reactions to the sentence. Most of the victims hurried past, unwilling to relive their experiences publicly. But I stopped, suddenly feeling a need to speak. Justice was served today, I said into the forest of microphones. But this case isn't really about Ryan Miller. It's about recognizing that emotional manipulation can be just as damaging as physical harm. It's about acknowledging that victims of financial fraud aren't stupid or gullible. They're often targeted by sophisticated predators who exploit human connection. A reporter pushed forward. Do you regret coming forward, given the public attention? I thought about the question carefully. I regret that I had to. I regret that our legal system often places the burden on victims to build cases against those who harm them. But I don't regret standing up for myself and helping prevent others from experiencing what I did. As the media frenzy continued, Patricia Miller approached quietly from the side, away from the cameras. Her health had visibly deteriorated since our first meeting months earlier. Thank you, she said simply. For what, I asked. For giving my son the one thing I never could: boundaries. Consequences. She paused, blinking back tears. I won't live to see him complete his sentence, but I'll die knowing he finally has a chance to become a better person. I didn't know how to respond to that. Despite everything, I couldn't bring myself to offer comfort about Ryan's future redemption. The wounds were still too fresh. Patricia seemed to understand my silence. She pressed a small package into my hands. This was your father's watch. Ryan took it from your apartment. I found it among his things. I stared at the package in shock. My father's vintage Omega, a gift from my mother on their wedding day. I had noticed it missing after Ryan disappeared, but assumed I had misplaced it during my depression. Learning he had stolen this sentimental item, on top of everything else, brought a fresh wave of pain. I'm sorry, Patricia whispered, for everything. As she walked away, Alyssa appeared at my side. You okay? I nodded, clutching the package containing my father's watch. I will be. Together we walked down the courthouse steps, past the reporters still calling questions, past curious onlookers, into the bright afternoon sunlight. For the first time in over a year, I felt truly free, not just of Ryan's influence, but of the shame and self-doubt that had plagued me since discovering his betrayal. That evening, alone in my apartment, I opened the package and slipped my father's watch onto my wrist. It was too large, sliding awkwardly against my skin, but I didn't care. Wearing it felt like reclaiming a piece of myself that Ryan had stolen. My phone buzzed with a text from Detective Mercer. Just heard from the prosecutor. Miller's offshore accounts contained more than we initially thought. Full restitution to all victims should be possible. Your father's money is coming home. I smiled through tears, running my fingers over the worn leather strap of my father's watch. It wasn't just about the money. It was about restoration of trust, of dignity, of faith and justice. The next morning, I awakened to find my story on the front page of national newspapers and trending on social media. Overnight, I had become the reluctant face of a movement against romance scammers and financial predators. My inbox overflowed with messages from other victims sharing their stories, thanking me for speaking out, asking for advice. Initially overwhelmed by the attention, I gradually recognized it as an opportunity. With Alyssa and several other victims, I established a support network for those who had experienced similar fraud. We created resources to help victims navigate the legal system and rebuild their financial lives. The foundation we established, named after my father, eventually secured funding to provide legal assistance to fraud victims who couldn't afford representation. What had begun as my personal nightmare had transformed into a mission to ensure others wouldn't face the same journey alone. 3 years passed. Life had taken unexpected turns for all of us affected by Ryan's schemes. Alyssa had used her portion of the restitution money to start a successful interior design business. Jennifer, the retirement fund victim, had written a best-selling book about financial safety for women. I had returned teaching but also lectured occasionally at financial institutions about fraud prevention. Ryan remained in prison, his appeals exhausted. According to the periodic updates I received from the prosecutor's office, he had become a model inmate, teaching financial literacy classes to other prisoners and participating in restorative justice programs. Whether this represented genuine change or simply another performance was impossible to know. Patricia Miller had passed away 6 months after Ryan's sentencing. In a move that surprised everyone, she had left her modest estate not to Ryan, but to the Victim Support Foundation we had established. On a crisp autumn morning, I received an unexpected call from Ryan's prison counselor. "Miss Thompson, I'm calling because Ryan Miller has requested to participate in a restorative justice meeting with his victims. This is entirely voluntary, and many victims decline such meetings. But he specifically asked that I contact you first." My immediate instinct was to refuse. What could possibly be gained from facing Ryan again? The legal proceedings were complete. Restitution had been made. The emotional wounds had finally begun to heal. "Why now?" I asked. "He's still got 5 years left on his sentence." "He's been working through the restorative justice program for over a year," the counselor explained. "It's a structured process designed to help offenders understand the full impact of their actions and give victims an opportunity for closure." I promised to consider it and hung up. My thoughts in turmoil. That evening, I called Alyssa and other victims to discuss the request. Reactions were mixed. Some refused outright. Others expressed cautious interest. "I'm curious," Alyssa admitted. "Is he really changed, or is this another manipulation? Either way, I think I'm strong enough now to face him without falling apart." After much consideration, 4 of us agreed to participate: myself, Alyssa, Jennifer, and a woman named Diane who had been one of Ryan's earliest victims. The meeting was scheduled for the following month at the prison's visitor center. As the day approached, I found myself increasingly anxious. What would I say to the man who had so thoroughly deceived me? What could he possibly say that would matter? The prison was a stark, imposing structure surrounded by razor wire and watchers. After clearing security and surrendering our personal items, we were escorted to a private room furnished with a simple round table and chairs. The institutional setting, with its beige walls and fluorescent lighting, seemed an appropriate backdrop for this final confrontation. When Ryan entered, escorted by a guard and his counselor, I barely recognized him. Gone was the polished appearance, the confident posture, the charismatic smile. The man before us looked older, humbler, his prison uniform hanging loosely on a frame that had lost its athletic build. "Thank you for coming," he said softly, taking the seat indicated by his counselor. "I know this couldn't have been an easy decision." The counselor explained the format of the meeting. Ryan would speak first, acknowledging his actions and their impact. Then each victim would have an opportunity to share how his crimes had affected their lives. Finally, there would be open dialogue if everyone felt comfortable proceeding. Ryan cleared his throat, eyes downcast. "I've rehearsed this moment countless times in my mind, trying to find the right words, but there are no right words for what I did to each of you." He looked up, meeting our gazes one by one. "I systematically targeted you. I studied your lives, your dreams, your vulnerabilities. I crafted personas designed to appeal to each of you specifically. And when I had gained your trust, your love, I exploited it in the most callous way possible." His voice remained steady, but I detected no performance in it, none of the practiced charm that had once been his trademark. "In my therapy here, I've been forced to confront the person I became. A predator. Someone who viewed human connection as merely a tool for personal gain." He paused, swallowing hard. "The hardest part has been accepting that I can never fully repair the damage I've caused. I can return the money, but I can't restore the trust I destroyed. I can't give back the months or years of emotional suffering." Jennifer interrupted, her voice sharp. "Why did you do it? What made you target women specifically?" Ryan nodded, accepting the question. "I told myself stories to justify my actions, that I was smarter than everyone else, that I deserved success without the work, that emotions were weaknesses to be exploited." He sighed heavily. But the truth is simpler and more pathetic. I was a coward, too afraid to build something real, either in business or relationships. Scamming was easier than risking genuine failure. One by one, we shared our experiences, the financial losses, the emotional devastation, the lingering trust issues that affected new relationships, the self-doubt and shame that had haunted us. Ryan listened without interruption, occasionally wiping tears from his eyes. When my turn came, I spoke directly to him. You didn't just take my father's money. You took my ability to trust my own judgment. For months after discovering your deception, I questioned every decision I made, every emotion I felt. I doubted my worth as a person. How could someone I loved so completely see me as nothing more than a mark? A wallet with convenient access? Ryan flinched at my words but maintained eye contact. The cruelest part, I continued, was how thoroughly you researched me before we met. You knew about my father's death, my dream of an art therapy center. You specifically crafted your fake business to appeal to my values: sustainability, community impact. You didn't just steal from me. You mocked everything I believed in. You're right, Ryan acknowledged quietly. There's no excuse for that level of calculated cruelty. As the meeting progressed, something unexpected happened. The anger and pain that had driven me for so long began to dissipate, not because of Ryan's apologies, but because I finally recognized my complete freedom from his influence. Sitting across from him now, I saw not the charismatic man who had once held such power over my emotions, but a broken person who had destroyed his own life along with others. What do you want from this meeting, Ryan? Diane asked during the open dialogue portion. What outcome are you hoping for? Ryan considered the question carefully. Not forgiveness. I haven't turned that and may never do so. What I want is for each of you to know that your strength in coming forward, in refusing to be silenced by shame, has forced me to confront who I really am. You've given me the opportunity to change, an opportunity I don't deserve but am committed to honoring. As the meeting drew to a close, the counselor asked if any of us had final thoughts. Alyssa spoke first. I won't pretend this meeting has erased the past, but it has helped me see that what happened wasn't about any deficiency in me. It was about your choices, Ryan. Your brokenness. That understanding is valuable. Jennifer nodded in agreement. I came here expecting to feel rage. Instead, I feel nothing. And that's a gift. You no longer have the power to affect my emotions. When my turn came, I reached into my pocket and withdrew a small object, my father's watch, which I had worn every day since Patricia returned it to me. This watch survived because your mother had enough integrity to return what you stole, I said, placing it on the table between us. I brought it today as a reminder that some things can be recovered, even after profound loss. I don't forgive you, Ryan, but I'm no longer defined by what you did to me. Ryan stared at the watch, recognition and shame crossing his face. Your father's wedding gift. I took it the last time I was at your apartment, before I disappeared. Why? I asked, genuinely curious. It wasn't valuable compared to what you already had from me. He shook his head slowly. I don't have a rational explanation. Taking something personal, something irreplaceable, it was the ultimate expression of power, of control. I was already planning to vanish with your money. The watch was unnecessary cruelty. His honesty, however painful, felt like the final piece of a puzzle I had been assembling for years. The man before me was neither the charming partner I had loved, nor the manipulative monster who had destroyed my life. He was simply human, deeply flawed, capable of terrible harm, but also possibly capable of change. As we prepared to leave, Ryan spoke one last time. I know words mean nothing coming from me, but I want you to know that the foundation you've created, the work you're doing to help other victims, is extraordinary. You've transformed something destructive into something healing. That takes remarkable strength and character. Outside the prison gates, the four of us stood together in the parking lot, processing the experience. Do you think he's really changed? Diane wondered. Jennifer shrugged. Maybe, maybe not. Either way, it doesn't matter to me anymore. I've moved on. Alyssa nodded in agreement. Exactly. That meeting wasn't for him. It was for us, for our closure. As we parted ways, Alyssa pulled me aside. Are you okay? You've been quiet. I considered the question carefully. I think I am, for the first time. I saw him clearly, not as the man I thought I loved or the monster who betrayed me, but as a broken person who made terrible choices. And in seeing that, I finally feel free of him. Driving home, I reflected on the journey of the past 3 years. The betrayal that had nearly destroyed me had instead become the catalyst for unexpected growth. The foundation we had established was helping hundreds of fraud victims navigate the difficult path to recovery. My father's money, the inheritance that Ryan had stolen, had been returned and multiplied through careful investment, allowing me to finally start the art therapy center I had dreamed about. 1 week after the prison meeting, I received an unexpected package. Inside was a handwritten letter from Ryan and a legal document transferring his remaining assets, mostly investments his mother had managed, to our victim support foundation. The letter was brief. "Emma, words cannot repair what I've broken, so I'll keep this short. The enclosed transfer represents my last meaningful possession. I've directed that all future earnings from my prison work also go to the foundation. It's a small gesture that changes nothing about the past, but perhaps it might help someone in the future. You asked me once why I targeted people who trusted me. The honest answer is that I never believed in trust, never experienced it genuinely. In my distorted worldview, all relationships were transactions, opportunities for gain or loss. Through the work I've done here, I'm beginning to understand what I miss: the authentic connections that give life meaning beyond material success. Too late for us, certainly, but perhaps not too late for me to become someone different than the person who caused so much pain. With respect and regret, Ryan." I folded the letter and placed it in my desk drawer, neither moved by its sentiment nor angered by its presumption. It was simply information, the final chapter in a story that was no longer mine. That evening, I sat on my balcony watching the sunset, my father's watch warm against my wrist. In the distance, construction crews were working on the new art therapy center scheduled to open in the spring. Life had come full circle in unexpected ways. My phone buzzed with a text message from Detective Mercer. "Now a friend. Just saw the news about the foundation's expansion. Your father would be proud." I smiled, knowing it was true. From terrible betrayal had come unexpected purpose. From profound loss had come new beginnings. The inheritance my father left me had been stolen and recovered, but its true value had never been monetary. It was the resilience he had taught me, the determination to transform pain into purpose. Ryan had once seen me as nothing more than a convenient source of funds for his schemes. But in the end, it was I who had defined our story's conclusion. Not through vengeance, but through the quiet power of creating meaning from suffering, of refusing to be diminished by another's cruelty. The national headlines that once proclaimed my victimhood now celebrated the foundation's work. The betrayal that had once defined me had become merely a chapter in a much larger story, one that I continued to write each day on my own terms. As darkness fell over the city, I made a silent promise to my father. His legacy would continue to grow, touching lives far beyond what either of us could have imagined. And in that promise was the most powerful form of justice: the transformation of loss into lasting purpose.